Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I hope so far everybody's having a good time. It's so good to see so many of you. Some of you I have not seen for many, many years. I'm humbled. I'm honored. And it's truly my pleasure to have this opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. My thanks to the Institute for inviting me to do so. It's been said, for unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. I have personally been blessed and given much through this institute. I'm going to speak more on this point in a few moments. Most people never think about it, but psychotherapy is an extremely important component of our healthcare system. However, its importance is oftentimes overlooked. Too often, psychotherapists are not appreciated for the life-sustaining and life-saving care they provide. A good therapist provides not just improved emotional and mental health, but also improved physical health. These are directly linked. The Institute for Individual and Group Psychotherapy and their associated therapists are committed and dedicated to creating a lasting, healthier emotional change in their patients. So tonight, before I go any further, I'm asking all the therapists to please stand for a moment that we might acknowledge you for the marvelous work you do in our community. Please stand. Thank you. You all are appreciated. Why is psychotherapy treatment so important? In the United States alone, millions of Americans suffer from depression and anxiety disorders. In fact, many of these people do not realize they have a treatable disease. There's also a strong misperception by some in the public and even some healthcare providers that depression and anxiety is simply a personal weakness or feeling that can be easily wished away. This misperception has prevented many people from even seeking the help they need with these disorders. People who suffer from depression and anxiety are also more likely to develop type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and many other illnesses, thereby adding to their depression and anxiety. They also put themselves at risk for many unnecessary medical and surgical procedures, and sometimes dangerous medications. Depression is also a potentially life-threatening disorder. Sadly, many depressed people go on to commit suicide, and suicide accounts for 32,000 deaths each year in the United States. In today's society, many people seek a quick solution to these disorders. They think a pill from their physician or a few sessions with a therapist will do the trick. Unfortunately, when it comes to most mental health illnesses, quick fixes simply do not work. Short-term therapy and medications only mask or appease the symptoms for a season. In order to create a lasting emotional change and possibly a cure in an individual's life, the psychotherapists involved with this institute recognize that patients with these disorders will typically require a long-term commitment with psychotherapy. I am a blessed man. Many years ago, I personally suffered from major depression. In fact, at one point in my life, I was also suicidal. If not for the grace of God and the timely intervention by a skillful and compassionate therapist, I would not be speaking to all of you tonight. Initially, I suffered from years of depression while growing up in Detroit in a deprived, dysfunctional home with 12 other siblings. Later, many other life events would then add to my depression. Somehow, despite my depressed illness, I was still able to complete my undergraduate studies at Wayne State University and then matriculate to Wayne State University School of Medicine. Unfortunately for me, with the pressure and stress of my medical school studies, my depression peaked. And in my third year, I began contemplating suicide. Previously in my past, I had been treated twice by different therapists for depression. Each treated me for a few months and concluded I was good to go. Nevertheless, I never experienced any lasting emotional change, and my depression continued. Now, with the stress of being a medical school student, I was afraid I would succumb to my illness and commit suicide. But I wanted to live. So I prayed, and I prayed some more. After a series of phone calls, I was given the name of a therapist that would see me in the Fisher Building. That person was Dr. Natan Harpaz. God would use this loving, skillful therapist to save my life. Dr. Harpaz agreed to see me for a few sessions as an evaluation. At the end of my evaluation, I asked him what he thought about me. Well, he told me. Now today, I have been knowing Dr. Harpaz for over 30 years. But to the uninitiated, Dr. Harpaz can sometimes seem a little strange. So when I asked him what he thought about me, he sat forward in his chair, he looked me straight in my eyes, and without hesitation or reservation, he said to me, "Phil, you are fucked up." I don't think any two words could better summarize the state of mind that I was in at the time. Now, I know to some of you, Dr. Harpaz's statement to me may sound highly unprofessional. And I'm not suggesting that any of you young therapists adopt Harpaz's protocols for communicating with his patients. I only know for me, it was exactly what I needed to hear. Finally, a therapist who would not BS me and I could trust, at least for the moment. So began my beginnings with Dr. Natan Harpaz. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. Psalms 40, 1 and 2. After a few months of individual therapy, I was placed in a group with other patients. Although initially frightened about being with other patients, I quickly began to see the benefits. It wasn't long before I realized that some of the other patients, some of my co-patients, suffered from many of the same fears and anxiety that I had. Damn, some of them were just as crazy as I was. However, within a short time, the people in my group and I became very close. We were sensitive and supportive of each other's emotional pain. My group became a safe place for me to talk about many of the powerful feelings and fears that I had accumulated over years of depression. I also had a co-therapist, Miss Sharon Banks, who blessed me with her love, her compassion, and her skills as a therapist. A female therapist also brought a different dynamic to the group, especially for men. On occasions, other therapists would also join and contribute their expertise to the group. When patients begin therapy, family members, parents, spouses, and sometimes significant others oftentimes become upset and may feel threatened. My father was no exception. He felt he had failed as a father because his son needed therapy. And by the way, it was many years before he really knew I had been suicidal. But he would say to me, "Why do you need to see a therapist? How can an old white Jewish man help my black son?" What does he know about the black experience anyway? You don't need to see a therapist. You just need to find a big hip girl and go have some sex and you'll be fine. Well, I did take his advice on one thing. I tried the big hip gal. It didn't work. So I continued my therapy. After months of therapy, my cloud of depression was dissipating. Even my dad admitted he now respected my therapist. Somehow, that old white Jewish man was helping his black son. And he liked the man I was becoming. After a few years of therapy, I thought it was time for me to leave. Against my therapist's and group members' strong suggestions, I had planned to quit therapy after 3 more sessions. I discussed my plans with my dad. He disagreed with me about quitting therapy. My father told me, "I know Dr. Harpaz has been helping you, and if he thinks you should continue your therapy, then I think you should continue. It took a long time for you to become the way you are, and it's going to take a long time before you'll be much better." Everyone was right. I still needed a lot more help with my life. My lasting change had not yet been created. A few days after deciding to stay in therapy, I literally met the love of my life, a beautiful young lady by the name of Sherry Lynette Brown. After dating for only a short while, I introduced Sherry to my father. He saw the joy and excitement I had for Sherry and would frequently joke with me about her. "Ooh, ooh, oh la la. We are in love with Mon Chéri. I just love me some Mon Chéri." My dad always referred to Sherry as Mon Chéri. He would also say to me, "I bet she makes your liver quiver too." Of course, I never denied that fact. As fate would have it, after only meeting Sherry once, my father clearly told me that Sherry would become my wife. As fate would have it, he would never meet Sherry again. My dad died the following month from a heart attack. I am a blessed man. literally days before my dad's death, he convinced me to continue my therapy. I realized even more, had I not done so, once again, I would have been lost. My father was right about Sherry. I had found my helpmeet, and we married 2.5 years later. This past September 3rd, we celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. I remained in therapy for many more years. I completed medical school in my residency. I became a full-time ER doc at North Oakland Medical Center in Pontiac, where I practiced emergency medicine for more than 20 years. I'm still practicing emergency medicine in Dallas, Texas. Only God knows how many lives I may have impacted since becoming a physician in June of 1985, now more than 30 years ago. I once treated a man in our ER with chest pain. After performing some tests and stabilizing him, I told him I wanted to admit him to the hospital for observation. He said to me, "No problem, Doc. You don't remember me. You saved my daughter's life 5 years ago." "How old is your daughter?" I asked. "She's 5 years old." I thought, how could I save his daughter's life 5 years ago? She's 5 years old now. He said, "My daughter was 1 month old and was very sick, and she was having trouble breathing. Suddenly, she stopped breathing, and you did mouth-to-mouth on her until she began to breathe again on her own. Dr. Masterson, you saved my daughter's life. Today, she's a happy and healthy 5-year-old girl. Of course, I will stay in the hospital if you say so." Over my long ER career, I have had many such moments. An old Jewish proverb tells us, if you save one life, you save the world entire. Because my life was saved by loving, gifted, and thoughtful therapists, God was then able to use me to literally blow the breath back into a baby. I am grateful to every therapist, every group member, and every individual that had a hand in my recovery, including the late great therapist, Dr. Reuben Barlevar, who was instrumental in creating this model of psychotherapy. I'm so grateful to Mrs. Sharon Banks for the love, compassion, and skillful therapy she gave me as my co-therapist. As for my dear friend, Dr. Natan Harpaz, God knows I thank you for loving and caring for me when I did not know how to do the same for myself. You are my greatest mentor, and no one I know is more thoughtful than you. There's no man on this planet I could ever love more than my beloved friend, Natan Harpaz. Together with the help of many others, my lasting change was created. Today, I have a life of love and happiness, no longer one of despair and depression. My life is full with family and friendships, church, community, and career. My lasting change means enjoying fatherhood with my delightful daughter, Nicole, as she matures into a beautiful, wonderful woman. And it means sharing the joys of life with my mon chéri, my beloved wife, Sherry. It also means enjoying a wonderful night with all of you, like tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am a blessed man. May God also bless you.